And tonight on the Daily Wrap, the Senate allows the NSA spy program to shut down. So who's to blame or congratulate? Senator Lindsey Graham declares his candidacy for president, but does he remotely stand a chance? Governor Jeb Bush is taking on entitlements, this time Social Security, but will he be able to sell it to conservative baby boomers? We talk about all that. Plus, we have a very special panelist on the show tonight. Find out whom in just a moment. This is the Daily Wrap, live from New York City. And welcome, everybody. I'm Joe Concha, along with my co-host, Sirius XM radio host, and senior political columnist for Forbes. He is Rick Unger.
He is.
To his right, power attorney and America's pundit. She is Heather Hansen. Right. And to her right, we have a very special panelist, as promised. He is one of the most distinguished Air Force pilots in American history, and also happens to be a New York Times best-selling author. Dan Hampton is here. Mr. Hampton has a new book out, The Hunter Killers, that hits bookstores and online tomorrow. Good timing. We'll be talking about the book a little later in the show. Dan, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. All right, time for the Daily Download. And we begin tonight with the Senate showdown over the NSA's surveillance program. No solution is likely until tomorrow at the earliest. The controversial program that collects phone call records of Americans was allowed to expire last night. Today, the Obama administration urged the Senate to approve a bipartisan measure that passed in the House.
What we have said for weeks now is that the Senate's failure to act introduces unnecessary risk to the country and to our citizens.
Now, besides the NSA's ability to collect domestic phone records in bulk, other provisions in the Patriot Act were allowed to expire. That includes the FBI's authority to gather business records in terrorism and espionage investigations, and to more easily eavesdrop on a suspect who discards cell phones to avoid surveillance. Those measures expired because Kentucky Senator and 2016 Republican hopeful Rand Paul blocked all attempts to extend them.
We are not collecting the information of spies. We are not collecting the information of terrorists. We are collecting all American citizens' records all of the time. This is what we fought the revolution over.
Now, Paul is drawing sharp criticism from both Democrats and fellow Republicans. Mr. Hampton will be weighing on that in a moment, I have a feeling. Arizona's John McCain, no friend of Mr. Paul's, accused the senator of putting his presidential aspirations ahead of national security. McCain called all of this a, quote, fundraising exercise, and he might have a point. On his Twitter account, Paul has been using his stand to raise money for his 2016 campaign. Is the country in danger with the NSA data collection program being shut down? We start with you, Mr. Hampton.
No, I don't think so. I think you hit it on the head there. This is a fundraising and a political effort on his part. And by the way, the Revolutionary War, I thought, was fought for taxation without representation, not anything to do with this. You know, our phone companies have all the phone records anyway, so what's the big deal? Okay.
Right, Heather, where's the victory? If we're still going to be collecting stuff, it's just a matter of where we store it. So Rand Paul's doing a victory lap, but in terms of people's privacy or liberty, it doesn't change the equation.
Well, it does to a slight extent, but it's not because of Rand Paul. In fact, he's just gotten in the way. Ultimately, the Freedom Act, which is going to replace the Patriot Act, is going to make the government get a warrant before they go looking through this information. So it does make one extra step. I think that it's completely fair and appropriate. But for Rand Paul to act as though he is the reason for this, all he has done is delay it and give us a couple days where not only the metadata, but the other things you mentioned are not in play.
Rick, I'd love to hear what you think about what this does for Rand Paul's presidential aspirations. Help him, hurt him?
It's a real problem. I mean, he talk about going all in. You know, he was on the right track, I think, when he began all of this. You know, but what they did in the House was the smart move. This will all change, but it will change very slowly. And the Freedom Act that the House passed is, I mean, it's not particularly significant. You know, they're not going to have trouble getting a warrant to get metadata from the phone companies. Actually, the part that disturbs me more than anything is the section where we are now unable to trace and listen in on people who throw away the burner phones. That's a really big problem potentially. It's only going to be a few days. They're going to work it out. The big problem may be that the Senate may come up with a compromise that's going to have to go back to the House. It would be best if that wasn't necessary.
Heather.
Yeah, it would really be best if they weren't messing with it too much. But when you talk about those burner phones, those are the lone wolves that we're most concerned about. So I think that's a problem. This has become really an ego thing for Rand Paul. When he's telling his followers to take selfies of themselves watching him, and then saying that some people want me to fail. I mean, this is not about him. This is about a privacy versus a safety issue. It's a bigger debate, and to make it about him, I think will put a lot of people off.
It seems that not a lot of people are happy with Mr. Paul tonight,
Well,
no matter
he's-
what side of the aisle that you're on.
He's also thinking about what Dan said. He's also not watching that TV series about George Washington's spies if he thinks that this is what we fought the revolution over, because there was a whole lot of spying domestically going on during the Revolutionary War. So
Britt Hume had an interesting perspective on Fox when it comes to Mr. Paul. He says that, does he know which party he's running for the nomination of? Because, boy, I've never seen this before, where just usually in a political season, one side says, attaboy, and the other side says, I totally disagree with it. This
Yeah,
is just
I don't think he's paying
whitewash.
attention to the verbiage either, because, and I think everybody can just sleep easy and make not much ado about nothing here. This has nothing to do with Section 702 of the FISA Act, which allows you to surveil people overseas and international communications coming back and forth inside the United States. Everything that they're talking about curtailing is really no big deal. Like I said, it's a matter of business records anyway, and the government is going to do what it has to do anyway. It always has. To protect people, so I'd say everybody just relax.
that's the other side of it. They're still collecting every
Yeah.
piece of data that they need in these few days.
The only word coming to mind right now is hyperbole, or symbolism.
This is-
it's
this
a tug of war
thing.
between those two.
Well, remember
is
the
his
clause in the Section 215 that they're talking about, it will not affect investigations that
Right.
are already started. So how many millions of investigations are they going to go say, hey, it's already started, we can continue? It's much ado about nothing. I'd say forget it.
Grandfather law in place here, no question. Well, President Obama has been urging the Senate to pass many of the authorities he campaigned against in 2007. Just take a look.
I will provide our intelligence and law enforcement agencies with the tools they need to track and take out the terrorists without undermining our Constitution and our freedom. That means no more illegal wiretapping of American citizens.
Okay, so Heather, what's changed?
I think he's seen that sometimes these things are necessary. You know, unfortunately, when you come into office and you actually have to do something as opposed to where he came from, you see that some of these things actually do work. I think that he has seen the import. As I said before, it's a balance between privacy and safety. And so you have to look at each situation and determine where that balance is going to fall. And he ultimately fell more on the side of the hawks, which is a little unusual for him.
Well, actually, let's be a little bit careful with this, because what he was talking about there is not what the Patriot Act previously authorized them to do. Collecting metadata is not wiretapping, legal or illegal. So it's really not at conflict with each other.
Where does this go in terms of the political season 2016? Is this going to be a big issue if it just becomes the Freedom Act, for instance?
Because Rand Paul is not going to be the player that he would like to be. If he were to remain a player in all of this, yes, it would be. But he's going to fade out, I think, because of the way he's behaved more quickly than I would have thought he was going
But
to.
don't you think he'd remain a player if people cared about this? I
No,
don't think
that's fair.
people
Yeah,
care
they
about
don't
this.
care.
I
You're
think
right.
that people
You're right.
are torn about Edward Snowden. You know, you've got some people who think he's a hero, and other people think that he's a traitor, and then most people are like, I don't really know, I don't really understand. I want to be safe, but I want to have my privacy and let other people figure it out. And I don't think it's going to be a major issue. People are worried about the economy. They're worried about national security. In that they don't
Doesn't
want
this
ISIS
play into
here.
national security?
Not to the same degree. People want to know that if ISIS comes, what we're going to do about ISIS, what we're going to do about Iraq, but not so much what we're going to do about the minutia of Section 215.
I have your next man on the street idea.
Uh-oh.
It just hit me,
What
literally.
would it be?
Go out into Bryant Park or some park here in New York and ask if people are for the Freedom Act, and then ask them if they're for the Patriot Act.
You're a very prescient guy. That's why you get the big bucks. That's exactly what we were going to do today. But it rained.
It rained.
And
Really?
there's no
Nobody
men to
out
be
there.
men out in the street for, you know?
There's nobody out there to ask those
The,
questions.
the equipment isn't waterproof.
That's right. And the
people,
equipment
they're-
isn't
right,
waterproof.
That's
So.
true.
No question. Last word.
Well, you know, you give away more information when you fill out a loan application in a bank or Obama's Affordable Care Act fiasco. You give away more there. People give away stuff on social media that I would never talk about. So what's the big deal?
Well, we've talked about that before, actually, where no one's having phone calls anyway. I know your daughter's here tonight. She probably texts a heck of a lot more than she's making phone calls, and everything's shared on Facebook and Twitter anyway.
Well, I
so
intercept all of those anyway.
you do.
Is that a violation of
I was going to
privacy?
say, I think that's a violation. That's a violation.
Depends on your point of view now, doesn't it?
If she's in the studio with us, if you need a good lawyer, I can give you one.
And we got to go. DYFS Online too, by the way. Anyway, Jeb Bush wants to push back the retirement age. How? Stay there.